Welcome everyone to another episode of Reimagining Cyber. I'm Rob Aragao and excited about this episode. Longtime listeners may remember back in late 2020, when we started our podcast, our first episode was called Cyber Resilience, So Much More Than Cybersecurity. In fact, this theme was the driving factor behind the launch of Reimagining Cyber. The idea that we should be approaching cybersecurity in a completely different way. With me to talk about this is Jerod Brennen. Jerod has over 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry, and he is currently keeping multiple plates spinning with his work as a virtual CISO, executive advisor, and cybersecurity career coach. And that's not all. Jerod is not just a tech guy, but also a writer and indie filmmaker. Jerod, I just want to briefly touch upon your filmmaking and storytelling past experience. I think that's just a critical component to, kind of everything you're all about in the conversations you and I have had offline. You obviously are very well versed in cybersecurity. You've built out cybersecurity programs, and specifically at Abercrombie Fitch is one of the bigger retailers here, specifically, of course, in the US, but also globally. And just kind of what was it behind the scenes in the background that helped you kind of launch into the job, and just where did you get through this as it connects back to that filmmaking, storytelling kind of elements of this experience you've taken forth in cybersecurity?
Yeah, no, it's twofold. One, we talk so much about the tech,
Mhm.
Rob, that we lose sight of kind of why we're doing any of this in the first place. And also, the stories, they help people understand why this stuff matters to them. They understand that they're not alone, that they're not the first folks to face this challenge. So that aspect of the storytelling and the filmmaking carried a lot of weight, but also working with the indie community, which, here in Columbus, Ohio, like, we've got hundreds of people at any given time working on productions from no budget to small feature.
Mm.
And when you're putting together a production, you're wearing a lot of hats, you're moving quickly, you have to step up and lead, and you have to lead with passion because if somebody's not getting paid, especially on a no budget, low budget production,
Mm-hmm.
the question of why do I need to be here doing this is top of mind for a lot of folks. And when I interviewed at Abercrombie, I was answering all the technical questions correctly, but Jake, my hiring manager, knew what I was getting into, and so he asked me about the work I did in filmmaking, and I let down all my defenses, right? You take off the mask, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
me. And I was pretty, I don't know what the word is for it. That passion really showed.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake let me know about 6 months into the job that it was that question that got me the job,
Wow. See that?
because he needed somebody who could come in and go toe to toe with directors and execs who'd been in these seats for years at an
Right.
organization that had no security program, that didn't want to change, didn't want to slow down. And I was perceived as an agent of all of that, and to be able to stand my ground, but do it in a way that was respectful and engaging and moving us all in the direction that we were all moving together, which was help the company grow, be successful, but preserve everything that we built to that time. He heard all that in the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, and I continue to do it, continue to
Well,
approach my job that way.
I think that's as you say, you kind of let down your guard to go into the interview process, and now you're like, you know what, that question just opened it up for you to be yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And as you said at the beginning, the connection point of you know understanding the tech and understanding the security controls to put in place. Awesome, got it. That's great. But how does that really connect into the relationships you're going to have in the given entity you're going to support, the risk posture and appetite that they were, okay with, um,
yeah,
and have the right set of debates and conversations and do so in a way. And again, that's the filmmaking slash storytelling aspect and the passion of, here's your why in the
yeah,
conversations that you would then have thereafter. I mean, that's absolutely critical. And I think that's one of the things I assume you would agree is what we've now started to see more so over the past several years in the CISO role is that transition of understanding the reality of we have to really focus on whatever organization we're here to support, to protect, but enable for opportunities of new revenue generation, cost avoidance, those business components are absolutely critical. And being able to stitch that together isn't always that easy, but being able to actually, know how to articulate it effectively and that passion and confidence come across can make all the difference in the world. I assume that that's really kind of what
Well,
shining the light for you.
it absolutely, absolutely. I talk a lot about meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate that I'm wired in a way that I can see somebody else's point of view pretty quickly.
Mm,
And when you understand what's important to the person you're speaking with, the person across the table, the person on the other end of the Zoom call, and you reframe your thinking, and this is, you challenge yourself, you let go of things that you have held on to with an iron grip, and you say, okay, I'm going to look at it. What matters to them? Why does it matter? And then how can I connect the two? Because I have goals and initiatives and expectations and requirements that's my expertise, that's my job. But I'm not alone. I mean, we're collaborating. Another
mm-hmm.
aspect of the filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
Filmmaking is a collaborative art form. No one person does all the things. And that's true in any organization you work in. And so as you start to approach these conversations from their point of view and take it on yourself to say, look, I'm going to be the one to figure out, I'm going to propose a solution that meets both what they're trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to accomplish. And then we'll iterate. We'll
Yeah.
we'll build on that. We'll go back and forth until we find the thing that we're going to do. People appreciate that. People just they want to be acknowledged and seen. And I
Mm-hmm.
think most importantly, they want to be recognized for the expertise that they bring to the table.
Yeah.
And
Couldn't
and
agree more. Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah,
don't
for
want to lose
sure.
sight of that.
No, for sure. For sure. Now let's dig into kind of key theme and topic that you and I want to chat. And to
Sure.
me, it's, this from our previous conversation, that this is a very core component of really what launched the podcast several years ago, reimagining cyber, and it's the reframing and thought process of how do we actually pivot from kind of this focus of cybersecurity only and take it to cyber resiliency and what that really means in greater value that we're delivering from a cyber lens to the business overall, which we kind of just were touching upon a little bit. But from your perspective, right, how do you, I would say, start with the definition of cyber resilience, but also then connect the dots on the real key differentiators it has versus traditional cybersecurity?
Yeah. Yeah. And this one, this hits really close to home for me for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a tinkerer. I love, even with all the gray, let me be hands to keyboard, let me nerd out, let me
Mm-hmm.
dig into solving a problem. And that tactical day to day, is as much as I enjoy it and as rewarding as it is, I need to elevate to this true idea of what does it mean to be strategic. And we use that word a lot, and we don't always accept that it means I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to let that go. I
Mm-hmm.
want to make decisions now that I might butt heads with folks. It might not make sense to everybody around the table. But if I see the vision and I know we can execute, and number one, I've got to hold the line, and I've got to stay the course, right? I can't give up. But at the same time, I've got to work to help everybody else see what I'm seeing. There's so much of that comes into this notion of building a cyber resilient uh, organization. And for me, the way I do that
Mm-hmm.
is I've adopted a mantra that security is not about security. And on the surface, it sounds silly, but I honestly believe that, and challenge myself when I get in the middle of a NIST cybersecurity framework or an ISO 27001, 27002 assessment, or
Mm-hmm.
insert framework or regulation here. And I'm looking at all the controls and all the things that we say we have to do. I step back and I tell myself, we don't have to do all these things. Now, anybody who's compliance either minded or has responsibility around compliance and regulation will say, Jerod, if you're still listening, you'd say, Jerod, that's ridiculous. We have to do those things. It's the cost of doing business. It's required for participation in an industry. But what I challenge myself to do is say, here at this organization that I am supporting right now, and I say that based on where they're located, who their leadership team is, what the organizational risk appetite is,
Mm-hmm.
how comfortable they are in their place in the market, how stable they are in terms of expanding or circling the wagons. I take all that into account and I go back to those security frameworks and regulations and say, which of these things are going to have the biggest impact on helping this company not just survive, but thrive? And
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
company. I work in higher ed, I work for nonprofits. It's any organization that needs to continue doing the thing they do. When we talk about all this security stuff, it's not starting with the frameworks. It's telling ourselves that security is not about security. The stuff that we've called cybersecurity is about helping this business continue. Whatever the goods they make, the services they deliver, that is the thing.
Yep. Yep.
And all the security stuff that we do, it turns out it supports the organization doing the thing, but we just have to start somewhere else.
100%. And to me, the compliance angle you were talking about. So I agree with you, especially on the frameworks that are out there. I think they're important, don't get me wrong, but I think
Mhm.
sometimes we get too caught up, or some people get too caught up on like the checkbox. I got to go through this whole thing.
Yeah,
From a compliance perspective, I've always said that if we are putting the right type of program, cyber resilience program in place that supports whatever organization we're part of, their mission, their business goals, and so on and so forth. Basically, when we're doing that effectively, everything else will just trickle down. And you will
it-
have the support embedded in itself in your program that also aligns to ensure you're covered as much as possible on the different compliance requirements you have for that particular given business. And so
yeah,
that way we all benefit at the end of the day. And at the end, though, it really comes down to the last statement you kind of just wrapped up with, which was it's all about what business we're supporting and the operational capability that they continue to operate to deliver their needs, with cyber really wrapped around and just embedded in, not this
yeah.
kind of, again, slowing us down perspective. That's my
And
viewpoint of wrapping that together.
that approach, because I can already hear folks who are listening saying, that's not how it works. You have to go in, you have to force it, you have to tell people these are the rules, follow the rules. But you hit on something key there, Rob. You're talking about going in and embracing the organizational culture.
Mm-hmm.
And a term we use a lot, but take a minute and really dig into it. My time at Abercrombie, that is one of the most risk-averse organizations I have ever worked for. When I started there, I heard within the first 2 weeks, someone on my floor stood up because it was an open floor plan,
Mm-hmm.
yelled, "Hey, I need to install software. What's the local admin password?" Somebody else yelled it back because
Oh,
everybody knew it. 200
wow.
people in IT and everybody knew it. And one of the first changes we made, but that's neither here nor there. But it was an organization that was moving quickly and just trusting that everything was going to work out. And it was very different from I came from a public utility that was very, oh,
Mm,
no, I'm sorry, Abercrombie, I used the term risk averse. They were risk accepting, risk embracing.
yeah, yeah,
Public
definitely.
utilities, when we're talking about national security, we're talking about loss of life scenarios, especially in extreme weather environments because of
Mm-hmm.
electricity. It was very different, very conservative in terms of risk. But when we're talking about going in and doing any of the security stuff, if you really take a minute to understand who these people are that you're sitting side by side with, how important is it to the leadership of the organization? How important is it to your customer base that these things are taken care of? And when I need to introduce a security thing, how's it going to be received?
Right.
All of these answers lie in culture. And if your approach to the security thing starts with that culture, you're not forcing anybody to do anything. You're meeting them where they are, and then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I get it. Yeah, this makes sense. Why has nobody ever explained it like this to me before?" It's because
Mm-hmm.
you've been so locked in to we have to hit this score against this framework
Right.
because arbitrarily somebody said we have to do the thing. Yeah, so embracing culture is it does yield those compliance results exactly the way you said. I see that. I that's the clients that I'm supporting right now is a fractional CISO. That's exactly how we do it. We start with understanding who they are and what's important to them as an organization. And the
Yeah.
security stuff we introduce is consistently embraced because it's
Mhm.
not overbearing. It's not ivory tower.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. You know, I think it would be really great for the audience to hear kind of what does good look like. So maybe is there an example of an organization? Don't need to share the name, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
what does that look like from just the top level kind of example?
Oh, yeah, I've got what, four or five? So I'm going to have to narrow it down.
Yes.
Um, I have I had a healthcare technology company I supported that had grown through
Mhm.
acquisition. They were moving fast. They were five different companies operating as a single company. Um, we had requirements here in the US for protecting healthcare data in alignment with HIPAA.
Mhm.
They were being targeted not just because of the data they had, but because of the technology they had in the environment. Um, and as we were building this program out, we started with the recognition that we first had to look at these five different company cultures that were still trying to come together. And it meant prioritizing certain controls over others as they were
Mhm.
centralizing on a single cloud provider, which I think when I joined, they had four or five different cloud environments. It was wild. Colo, they had everything scattered and they were forcing everyone to the technical folks to bring everything together.
Mhm.
Um, we had things that we wanted to do from a security perspective in that environment, but we respected and acknowledged that they weren't ready for it. And I could have gone in and forced the issue. I could have gone in and tried to demand that they follow certain best practices, and it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have
Right.
been sustainable. It would have
Mhm.
been too much spend. There would have been resistance, which often leads to people circumventing controls just for the sake of doing their job. So, we took a different approach where we implemented certain things incrementally. We focused on some other areas that uh, also needed addressed. And so, in that example, it was we were building that cyber resilient organization by adjusting roadmap to align with culture, not just
Mhm.
budget and resources, but culture. And then at the same time, we knew from a financial perspective that the organization was competing against similar organizations who had similar services, similar products. And so we had a conversation with the CEO and said, you know what? We're already doing SOC 2 Type 2. They had that in place, that process before I started supporting them.
Mhm.
Uh, and we said, if we were to look at high trust, and I've got to get the acronyms right. Is it R1 or E1? The basic, maybe E1 essentials, that the bare minimum of are you doing due diligence according to this particular standard framework authority? And I say we, it was me, the information security officer, a couple other members of the security function, said we think we can achieve this basic level of certification, which we can then put the logo on the website and demonstrate to our clients
Yeah.
that we take security and privacy seriously. And if we do that internal to security, we're going to help the marketing team have better language around how to protect how to attract customers. We're going
Yeah.
to enable the sales team to go out and win deals. We're going to
Mhm.
encourage customer retention because if they're looking at A and B and they look very similar in terms of offerings, but this one has a pretty compelling security and privacy story. And the CEO, we didn't have to work hard to convince the entire executive leadership team that that was worth a spend. And we did it in short order because we'd already done some of the due diligence. It turned out we just had a couple of additional controls. So
Mhm.
as also, when we're talking about cyber resilience, if you can look at the in the weeds, working with culture to build out controls and, crawl, walk, run
Right.
to where we're able to meet what we know we should have as security professionals to
Mhm.
protect the organization from attack. But at the same time, we're looking at how do we support the financial health of the organization? How do we support the brand? And you'll hear people say that we need to be business enablers. right? I hear that all the time. Security is a
Right.
business enabler. I say it. That's how you do it.
That's an example.
That's how
Exactly.
you make it real.
Exactly.
So that's one example. And again, I could go on for hours
No, but
about all
that's a
the
great example. Because
yeah,
I love the fact that exactly what you just did, which is you tied it back in to how we actually present an example of truly being a business enabler. Because you're right.
mhm,
I hear way too often just the term thrown out there, a business enabler. Cyber can be a business enabler to do these things. What, well, okay, great, but how? And so your
how?
example was, hey, listen, we're already doing the majority of these things. There's a couple more things that we just need to do. And if we do them, by the way, this is how you can actually leverage them in your business as a competitive and value differentiator, right?
Yeah,
It's to support what you just said, the branding back to marketing, back to sales, more revenue, right? And pulling from the competition. Would you like to do that? Well, of course,
yeah,
the answer was yes. Perfect,
yeah.
Sam. Perfect,
Easy
Sam.
to sell.
Yeah,
Possible.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of close us off here with having you share with the audience what you view as really the key, kind of key, pillars of cyber resiliency frameworks an organization should have. Just kind of what's that focus? Just lay it out in its most simplest fashion that they can interpret and start considering back for themselves and what they could do within the organizations that they support.
Sure. Um, so for context, I work with LinkedIn Learning. I've been working with them for a number of years. Alyssa, if you're learning, I absolutely love working with you. You're fantastic. I've built a lot of courses out there. And one of the courses I built is around what we call security testing. And I took a moment at the front of that course to explain what a cybersecurity practitioner should do, like how you go about building cybersecurity. And it all starts with Stephen Covey, Seek to Understand.
Mm,
You go through and do a series of assessments. The recommended order that I follow is you do a controls assessment to understand what the organization has in place. And then you do a risk assessment where you take that control information and take threat information and understand what are we trying to protect? Why are we doing any of this security in the first place? Then you take what you've learned, you do a compliance assessment because compliance is also a risk. It's a different kind of risk,
mhm,
or financial. And then you do vulnerability assessments where you get in the technical weeds, and then you do a penetration test to validate the technical controls. All of that in order
mhm,
is a framework that you could follow to implement a cybersecurity program. But when we're talking cyber resilience, you just step back a bit and add two things to the front of that. The first thing you do is business process modeling.
mm,
And I'm using that term because I know it resonates in different industries, but it's really just shoulder surfing. How does your organization do what they do? How do they make the thing? How do they deliver the service? And in a technical field that tends to attract introverts, of which I'm one, it is challenging to get out from behind our virtual desk and just go talk to people. Tell me how you do your job.
mhm.
But that's the first thing that any cyber professional who's focused on resilience should do. You need to go out and talk to the people about how the business functions. Set everything you know about cybersecurity to the side. You are there as a sponge just to learn. The second thing you should do is pull up the annual report, or if you're publicly traded, the most recent 10K, and go through the risk section, because here we're getting out of cyber risk and we're looking at enterprise risk, and we're looking at all of the things that leadership is reporting to anybody who's got a stake in the company to say, these are the material risks that could disrupt our business. Some of it is supply chain issues, some of it is government regulation, some of it is competitors coming to market. And initially, a cybersecurity professional will say, well, I can't control any of that. It's not about controlling it. It's about contributing your knowledge
Right.
of cybersecurity to enabling that. Because can you support supply chain risk? Yeah, absolutely. You look at any framework or standard, and we've got all these supply chain risk things we should do. Can you support go to market? Like that example I just shared, Rob, about the
Right.
client who went with high trust did exactly that.
Mhm.
So by pretending you're not a cybersecurity professional and just looking at the company through how do we do what we do,
Right.
And then what are the big ticket risks, the big enterprise items that we need to track? Then you can come back into the assessment life cycle, and the perspective you have that at that point is so much more valuable and useful and applicable. And if this is all brand new to you, COSO, the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations, right, the SOX, all those people, they've
Right.
got on their website, I think like 20 or 30 resources around enterprise risk management to help fill in the gaps that you may not have learned in your career to this point, to understand how to interpret those questions or how to ask or how to tie what we're seeing into more current advances in technology, like the adoption of cloud computing, the adoption of generative AI.
Hmm.
And so it's really, I don't think it's out of left field. I don't think it's cutting edge, but I do think that it's letting go of the things that we take pride in and that we have built our entire careers on. I'm a
Yeah.
cybersecurity expert. Yeah, let that go for a minute and just listen and learn. And if you're doing it through that lens, it all locks in. It's been amazing to me since I've adopted that thinking, how easy it is to help organizations protect themselves as we're doing this cybersecurity thing or
Yeah.
cyber resilience.
I think the parallel you just drew between cybersecurity, really cyber resilience, to enterprise risk management is so critical. And for quite some time, I've heard there's not really this key connection point to enterprise risk management with cyber or cyber risk that we want to talk about. It just doesn't exist. It absolutely exists. But the point is if you're not looking at it from the lens that you just discussed of the business you're a part of, going through and realizing what the kind of core principles are for what they're trying to accomplish, the annual report, the 10K, look at the risk section as you mentioned, look back to see what the key initiatives are for the 3 to 4, 5 year outlook and how you could participate in supporting that. What it then does is it draws the right level of verbiage that you as an individual need to be using in your conversations within your organization to connect the dots. And the other
Yeah.
principle I wanted to bring back to cyber resilience is, for me, what I saw is the connection point of executive leadership, even board members actually started kind of clicking for them the understanding of what cyber can actually be to support them when we started tying it back into being cyber resilience. Why? Because
Yeah.
they understand enterprise resilience and operational resiliency. And so as long as you're kind of working again the verbiage and context within that same way of thinking and applying the cyber lens to it, for them, it just clicks. So your conversations and what you're trying to come across with the value, and many times the asks when you're having those opportunities to engage with them are much more succinct. So I think again, this is the maturation, if you will, of what we've
Yeah.
been seeing. And I really appreciate you coming on and doing several things. One is shining light back on the topic, because it's critical. Talking about the reality of examples of business enablement and how important it is. Talking about being uncomfortable and actually getting outside of the box of comfort and tech and going to understand what the businesses you're supporting and why, and how then you stitch together the value that you can bring and offer to them. And that's exactly what you've been able to do successfully through your career. So we thank you so much for coming on, shaping our minds differently than how we can approach within each of our organizations we support cyber and putting that resiliency forward in our go forward strategy overall. So thank you so much, Jared. Really appreciate the
Appreciate
time.
that. If I could offer one last closing thought,
Absolutely.
because you hit on something there at the tail end that is essential. The C-suite and the board, we can't let them off the hook because
Hmm.
as long as they continue to treat cyber as a carve out and they don't eh, understand or accept the permeation of what cybersecurity professionals do in every aspect of that enterprise risk management program, they can be holding back the ability for the cybersecurity teams to really truly enable the business. So while we're doing the work from the cyber area, right? The teams,
Right.
the groups, in the weeds, there's also an expectation for boards and C-suite members to understand if you are still considering cyber to be an IT function, you are woefully behind. And it's okay for you to be uncomfortable too and say, let's take a different approach. So I really appreciate the chance to talk through this, Rob. It's so important, and I'd love to see more people just embrace it.
Yeah, I am right there with you. And thanks for putting the exclamation point on it for sure. Great episode. Really appreciate it. And again, thanks for coming on.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, producer Ben here, and as Rob mentioned at the start of this episode, the Reimagining Cyber project was inspired by the idea of cyber resilience being so much more than cybersecurity. So, as you'd expect, there are quite a few episodes on this theme for you to catch up on. For example, episode 115, called Cyber Resilience, Are Your Strategies Fit for Purpose? It featured Bindu Sundarasan, Director of Cybersecurity Solutions at Level Blue.
Make sure that your incident response tabletop scenarios are reflecting how your business has changed, right? So one of the things that I often discuss is there is no point in us just rehearsing the same thing that we've rehearsed every 6 months and sort of having this feel good moment, right? Let's see how we can make you fail that tabletop so that when real situations occur, you're better prepared, right? So don't sort of, go into this sort of false aspect of saying, okay, I'm just going to run through these scenarios and go through this with the same audience that knows this. Because in a real life scenario, it's never going to be that known audience that you rehearsed it with that limited sample. And it's never going to be exactly sort of that cookie cutter scenario with injection triggers, right? If that were the case, we should be recovering from every incident in minutes, right? And that's never the case.
That was Bindu Sundarasan, Director of Cybersecurity Solutions at Level Blue. On episode 115, Cyber Resilience, Are Your Strategies Fit for Purpose? Go take a listen. Thanks for joining us here on Reimagining Cyber. We'll be back next Wednesday with our other expert host, Tyler Moffat, who'll be giving his take on one of the latest big incidents in the cybersecurity world. Goodbye.